Hello everybody, here's Granny Alice again, feeling a little bit less nervous and being compelled to read another story. I have been writing these stories, and once I actually read them all to myself and noticed that they're all about love. So here I am, sowing the seeds of love. I hope you enjoy it. Little Alice and Her Tree is this story. This story is called. This is a story about a little girl named Alice. She was also known in her family as Spike, being sometimes a little rough around the edges and awfully independent. For all that, she was a happy little girl. During the school year, she would skip to school, bouncing her books and her crayons in her satchel. She loved learning new things and spending time with her friends, and in spite of being a bit of a spike, she loved spending time at home with Mum and Dad. There were many things she enjoyed doing, both at home and at school, but above all, she loved her summer holidays. Almost as soon as the last bell rang to set the children free from school, little Alice would say goodbye to her school friends and get whisked away by her Mum and Dad on a journey. This journey would last about a day. A whole day spent with Mum and Dad was bliss, and the knowledge that their destination was her uncle's farm, her softly spoken auntie, and a whole bunch of cousins she got on so well with, was the cherry on top. During the journey, little Alice would sit in the car, looking through the rear window, imagining princesses living in every ruin they passed. There were wolves in every forest they traversed, hungry for Little Red Riding Hood. Dad would laugh and tease her, but she always had a sneaky suspicion that he too believed in wolves. Finally, looking with awe at the sky reddening and displaying all its evening glory in colors of pink, violet and darkening blue, Alice's favorite, little Alice would start recognizing familiar sights. There was another bend, another dusty crossroads, until there it was, the very reason why her holidays were so very special to her. Unable to contain her excitement, she would often beg her father to stop and let her out. She was unable to wait any longer. She had to say hello to her beloved tree. It was a pine tree, a lonely, crooked pine tree, with twisted branches growing in all directions, its trunk leaning forward towards the road, as if ready to kneel with a welcoming reverence to all that came before it, but especially to Alice, or so she believed. The tree, since forever, stood at the crossroads, one of which was the entrance road to her uncle's farmstead. It just stood there, a guardian and observer of all the happy holidays little Alice spent running around the farm and the surrounding countryside. The tree would musingly look at Alice as she ran, often barefooted, feeling the warm, soft grass under her feet, or the gritty yellow sand of the unpaved road that took her to her tree. It was beyond clear to her that every time she came, she had to go and greet the tree first, before she did anything else. It always stood there with its gnarled branches stretched out, on this occasion towards her from afar, and little Alice would run joyfully towards it, with her arms outstretched to meet her faithful friend. There followed a short loving embrace and a hasty kiss, which had to be enough for now, Mum and Dad impatiently calling her back from the car, for her family had to be greeted too, naturally. It was usually the next day when, after a quick breakfast, she would be allowed to roam free. Taking advantage of this, little Alice would rush out of the house, skipping 3 stairs in one jump, often followed by 2 of her favorite cousins, and run like the wind towards her tree. With the glee of child's pure love and trust, she would then indulge in a long embrace, and stand still, listening, listening ever so silently, with her little ear pressed against the rough bark, as if it were the softest of silks. With her little fingers to her lips, bidding her cousins to stand still and listen too, she would sometimes spot a line of ants laboriously climbing up, and she would wonder how big the world must look to them from the top of the tree, and whether they ever got that far, being so small. Or how she wanted to know all the stories that both the ants and the tree could tell her. With her little ear pressed against the warm, fragrant bark, she heard the tree telling her of seeing her cousins running to school in the mornings, and then back home in the afternoons, how the boys would sometimes, all dolled up, whiz past it on their bikes, going to meet their friends, or maybe their girlfriends, in the neighboring village. But little Alice liked best listening to stories about animals. Hence the tree would tell her about all the farm animals passing to and fro along the sandy golden road that led to the fields, and how they would be so glad after a busy day to come home in the afternoon to rest in the shed. One of Alice's favorite stories were about the birds that came to visit the tree, and how they would sit on its branches, giving the most divine concerts. The birds would so enchant the tree that at times it wanted to follow them and soar into the sky, every time realizing, though, that it couldn't abandon its post, for who would guard the farm in its stead? After all, it was appointed to that post, and nobody could do it better. The tree absolutely knew that, and would only follow the singers with his approving gaze. This gaze often would get caught, Alice was told, on the visions of the world reflected in the clouds. Yes, the world was reflected in the clouds. She often heard him say, herself enchanted by the shapes the clouds would form. They then both would look up, sometimes joined by Alice's cousins, to see dragons and enormous elephants, and the waves of oceans, and whales in the waves, or mermaids, or huge ships, or little boats floating lightly and swiftly across the enchanted sky. What wonders! One day, hugging the tree, Alice heard a story of two butterflies that came to play around its branches. As they almost didn't weigh anything, they ever so gently touched the welcoming boughs. They were impatient to play, so they would never spend much time sitting on the tree, but they would delight it with their divine dance. Flapping their colorful wings, they would follow each other, circling around in the most delightful way, moving in a synchronized motion up and down, round and round the tree, their wings reflecting the sun, till they would fly away, up and up, into the sky towards the sun, as if their mission was to melt with it. In contrast, Alice was told next, the tree, rather indignant, how once a little squirrel, like a red thunderbolt, tearing through the forest in search of nuts, jumped onto the tree's branch and tore a piece of bark off with its sharp little claws, which, however painful, was fortunately not fatal to the tree. Little Alice was rather busy during her holidays in the farm. There were so many things to do, so many animals to be watched. The most interesting was the mother pig with the naughty little babies. They would run into each other or into their mum, squealing all the time. Their mum, on the other hand, laid sprawled out on her side like a fat, benevolent giant, watching Lilliputians at play, grunting occasionally, which made a great tummy wobble, and following her frolicking offspring with her strangely pink eyes. There were cows looking at Alice curiously with their big shiny eyes, slowly, lazily munching, endlessly munching. They were always munching. And then there were graceful upright horses, shaking their manes energetically from time to time, as if impatiently waiting for something, bending their legs and scraping the ground, and trying to keep the flies, which seemed to irritate them no end, off their backs with their long, supple tails. It seemed like it was only a short time into the holidays when suddenly there came upon everyone long, hot days of harvest. The tree watched the whole family marching to the fields to help out, and little Alice, sitting on a cart, pulled by one of the impatient horses. Maybe that's what he was waiting for. Maybe he was impatient to be busy. The horses seemed to like being busy. They would joyfully shake their heads and wave their tails from side to side, closely in front of Alice's face, which brings squeals of delight out of the depths of her being. Alice waves a hand to the guardian tree as the whole noisy party passes by. The tree bows its head, and if it had eyes, thought Alice, it would have definitely winked at her as she sat on the jolting cart, laughing with glee and expectation. Childlike expectation of fun in everything. Dry, sunny July days, the omnipresent dust made people sneeze. Some wore handkerchiefs over their mouths. Maybe it helped a little, but not much. Before long it is lunchtime. The tree sees Alice's auntie dashing quickly back to the house to make some food for the hungry, dusty farm workers. Then there is a moment of rest under Alice's tree. That's how the tree knows so many stories, thinks Alice, looking around at people, talking and laughing, sitting in its shade. The evening comes. Tired people go back to the house to wash and eat and rest. Alice, saying good night to the tree on the way back home, wonders what the tree does at night. Next early morning sees Alice hugging the tree again. She really wants to know some night stories. With her ear tied to the warm bark, she stops breathing to hear them better. So the loving tree speaks of the night. Sometimes an owl comes to sit on the branch to turn its head round and round and hoot its stories to the tree. It talks of its silent flight enveloped in darkness in search of food. Sometimes a bat whooshes past hungry, chasing its prey. That scared Alice a little. She was not sure if she liked that night very much, and that's when she heard the story of the fireflies and the stars. Little Alice stood motionless when the tree told her how there is a night of all summer nights when there is magic in the air, and the whole world around gets filled with miniature little lanterns being carried by bugs. Yes, bugs carry shiny green little lanterns in their hind legs. They illuminate the air around and almost look as if they were reflecting the stars in the sky. Or is it the other way around? Mused the tree, not quite sure. Well, whoever reflects whom, it makes no difference. The tree decides finally. It is a spectacle, this show of lights, and so delightful to behold. And then there is the moon, the ever-changing moon, which sometimes, with its strong silver light, makes the green tree appear silver blue. This story was pleasing to Alice, and she delighted in imagining the tree enveloped in silver light, with green fireflies encircling its branches like a crown made of emeralds. She saw emeralds in a book once, and she was sure that the fireflies looked the same. It was not always sunny on holidays, though, and some days it rained, although it seemed seldom, and little Alice would wake up on those rare rainy days to see the windows of the room where she slept double glazed with a thick sheet of water. Those were the days when children were told to stay in. They never minded, as there were plenty of games to be played inside the house. It was the attic they usually turned their steps to. To get there, you had to climb a very steep wooden staircase, almost like a ladder. But not quite. To add mystery to this little adventure, the staircase was lit by a very dim light coming from the chinks of the old wooden attic trapdoor with a metal handle. There were hours of fun to be had amongst all the wooden chests of treasures Alice's auntie kept in the attic. Dressing up in all the old clothes she kept there, pretending to be adults and having adult conversation, delighted the children. The additional attraction was the smell and sight of drying apples and pears and plums. A little testing of those delicacies was always in order too on those occasions. The children felt justified in this little mischief, for after all, they were kept at home. There were little windows at both ends of the attic. One looked out onto the orchard full of old fruit trees, and from the other, Alice could observe her tree. She felt sorry for the tree getting all soaking wet with the pouring rain when she was nice and dry playing inside. What was it like to be a tree, to be out there in all weathers, thought Alice to herself, waiting for the rain to stop. She knew well the moment it did stop, for there was no more pitter-patter on the roof and on the window panes. The children were released again to run and roam outside. There were puddles in the yard, and not one escaped from being jumped into. After lunch, the farm children went to their duties. Alice's responsibility was to collect the eggs, and she respectfully went up to all the hens sitting on their nests and gently, with a smile and a nod, took the still warm treasures into her small hands and put them into the basket. After having performed this very important chore, she found a moment to visit her tree. It was still wet, glistening in the sun. What would it tell her about the rain, she wondered, putting her ear against its still wet but warm bark. So the tree told her how it loved the rain. The rainwater didn't only quench its thirst, but it cleansed it of all the dust that was making its needles look and feel tired sometimes. It did not only refresh the tree, but it would create yet another delightful spectacle for it to watch. It was the spectacle of the rainbow that hung in the air, forming a multicolored arch, as if it were a magical entrance to another world. In this other world, where everything was the color of the rainbow, the tree imagined itself not green and brown, but all the colors of the world. Where did it get this idea from? asked the tree little Alice. It was the little droplets of water hanging on its branches after the rain lit up the sun's rays that created tiny little rainbows, like miniature baubles hanging on a Christmas tree, that gave the tree an idea of the rainbow world on the other side of the rainbow. Summer over. It is time little Alice went back to her life in the city. Her dad comes to pick her up by car to drive her home. Of course she's happy. She loves her dad, and she loves her mom, and she loves her life in the city with all its wonders. As they pass by her beautiful pine tree on the way out of the farm, she presses her little lips to the window, sending a goodbye kiss, and waves a little hand. The tree bows. Alice is happy in the knowledge that the tree is proud of its duty and can entertain itself so well. She's happy to know that next time she comes, her tree will be there, waiting for her, waiting to tell her now new and exciting stories. She settles comfortably to look for magic out through the rear window of the car on the way back home. And that's the end of my second story. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed writing it. Thank you very much, and see you next time. Bye.